It's a very rare combination to find product and engineering sitting together and discussing something and not debating.
Yeah, that's also an experiment over here right now.
So we are experimenting. Hi everyone, welcome to another podcast of O4S Labs. Today's topic of discussion is rapid mobile development for product experimentation. So here we have two different teams, so totally two different verticals, product and engineering, and we'll try to share our views on a particular topic. And it's a very rare combination to find product and engineering sitting together and discussing something and not debating.
Yeah, that's also an experiment over here right now.
So we are experimenting. One more thing here. Okay, so before we deep dive, let's have a quick introduction.
Sure. So hi, I'm Karthik. I'm a product manager at O4S. So I've worked on multiple verticals. I just recently joined O4S now. Even I am an experiment over here right now. Yeah. So Mayank.
Hi, I'm Mayank and I'm the product manager for the B2C vertical of the O4S, and I have been associated with O4S for the past 1 year.
And Jatin this side, I am part of the O4S engineering team. I handle basically everything related to mobile development in O4S, including demands from products such as this one, rapid product experimentation. Okay, so we'll basically try to cover up and show you how to develop a process in which, if you follow that process, you will be able to reach product experimentation without affecting the mobile development pace or without affecting the product development pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay, so first product team will be giving a bit of explanation perspective on the product side, and then I'll explain the architectural point of mobile side. So over to you guys.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jatin. So, I wanted to start with how the experimentation functions and what is exactly experimentation. So, just as the name suggests, it is all about testing out an idea or say a hypothesis of on a segment of user, on a segment of your application user, and then see if the intent of the test are as per the expected result or not. Or basically the intent of the test is aligned to your results or not. So it's basically simply, let's understand in a very simple way. Experimentation is applying scientific principles to establish causation between changes to the product and their outcome. So the topic experimentation has become very important these days because the product has been becoming very complex, and there has been a frequent demand from the product managers to make an incremental changes to the product.
I think why experimentation before that? I think people don't realize they are already in the experimental phase.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, in the startups, whenever you try to push out an app to the market, suppose it's the first time the startup has built an app, they are trying to push it. They just don't realize it that this is an experiment itself. You don't know how the app is going to react, how the user is going to react. Obviously, yes, we can play a lot of experimental after we have some data over us, and then we can decide, okay, we want to ship a particular feature out and we want to experiment with this particular feature, see how it goes forward. But I think if you see the crux, each and every company is already in the experimental phase. They just don't realize it yet because they're not playing with the failures and the plus points of what they're experimenting with. But I think it's already a part. We just need to set a process in this.
Right, exactly.
So it could be either testing out. Experimentation is all about testing new features. It could be new design. It could be experimenting with the marketing campaigns to the segmented users. It could be the understanding the behavior of the user when changing the user flow.
Yeah,
exactly.
So the beauty of experimentation is something that it gives a structured approach to discovering unbiased learnings and uncovering the real cause to any to change in the matrices, or maybe even when they are even too small to be measured.
Yeah, definitely. Each and every minor detail is very important, I think.
Exactly. So there was this RMG gaming platform, platform where you pay and play, and the winner takes the prize. So I was following one of those platform, and they were facing an issue in which they wanted to increase the gameplay or more participation of their users with their app.
More user engagement.
Exactly. And also increase the retention. So retention is basically when how many users come next day again to play. So they wanted to increase that retention also. So what they basically did, they went back to the basics. There are multiple ways to increase your retention by doing multiple engagement kind of campaigns. But what they did basically, they went back to the basics and they saw what is the first experience that user is having on the app, and that is 70% of the new users play the top priority game, the game which is at the top. They used to play that. So they went to the basics that let's change that. they changed it to a game which had most participation by users. They switched it with that game. So what they did is that from a cut fruit slash kind of game, they changed it to cricket game, and they saw a surge in participation. More users started to play. The gameplay increased, the participation increased, the retention also increased. It was a very small change, just by changing the first experience of the user. So when we look at from broader perspective from outside, it's a small change only by changing the game. But if you deep dive into it, it involves a lot of decision making. It involves a lot of technology changes also.
Definitely.
And so based on that change only, they were able to boost their participation, their gameplays and everything. So they won't be able to basically be successful in that unless they have decided, okay, what kind of experiment we have to do. What is the aim? That aim was very much clear to them, that we have to increase the gameplay, we have to increase the retention. So intent is very important to know
And I think
before you
they
do
did a very
it.
smart move by choosing the cricket. India is all about cricket.
Exactly, and I
They
think
bang on, they tried the experiment. I think it's a very good experiment, and they must have succeeded very good in this.
yes, indeed, and also one thing that when they did that change, that was also the IPL was about to start begin. So
Okay, makes sense.
so it was correlated to that. So you have to keep a lot of decision in mind while doing an experiment. So these are some of the things.
Definitely, a lot of factors affect the kind of
Exactly.
process flow and the kind of stage you are at in an organization. I think that would define the kind of experiment. You can't just start doing experiment anything. Experiment is not like you just play around with anything. You have to have a mindset regarding the experiment. How do you want to achieve to that particular stage
Right.
via the experiment?
The intent has to be very
But
clear.
Intent has to be very clear, very clear.
Exactly. So like you mentioned, intent has to be very clear. So you should know why you have to do an experiment. One thing that a lot of people don't understand is why they have to do an experimentation. So a lot of new startups also don't go into experimentation initially because they don't know why it is important. So experimentation is a very crucial part of any product building, and especially if you want to scale, because while doing experimentation you realize a lot of verticals that could be possible for your product. It keeps your product alive. It helps you innovating and bringing new ideas into the system. It helps you to improve or make your user flow efficient. It also gives you a reality check that what you're already doing is better or not. So if I'm doing something and I did an experiment that failed, I realized that what I'm doing is right. So we always start with a gut feel, and then later on from the data and through experimentation we realize what we are doing is right or wrong. If you're doing right, we keep innovating it. If you're doing wrong, then we improve it. We make it efficient. So that's why experiment helps you to reach that level of understanding. So that's why experimentation is very important. And there's one thing that like all physical products that we have in the market, all the technological product, whether it's a social media, it's a gaming platform, whether it's any other video watching platform, anything, every product has an expiration date. The problem with an app or any technological device is that it's hard to determine what the would be. So it could be either the general trend in the market, the user behavior, or a crazy pandemic that basically decides when your product is going to die. So you don't know that. So that's why when you keep doing experiment, you realize okay, at this point I can, if my product is going towards an expiration or I see a lot of users not using my app, I see a down in trend, then any experiment that I've done in the past which has shown good results, I could basically launch it. I could revamp it, I could improve it and roll out slowly so that my app doesn't die. So that's experimentation helps you to keep your app alive.
Adding to what's saying right now, experimentation really adds value to the business. You might have remembered a few years back when there was a rise in the pollution level in the Delhi NCR.
Yeah.
So the government introduced the rule of odd and even, where the odd vehicles were allowed to run on the odd days and vice versa.
Yeah.
So as soon as this rule was rolled out, immediately the traveling app companies, the cab aggregators, they started rolling out the features within the couple of days about the sharing the cab.
Right.
So do you really think they created the entire feature in the couple of days and launched it? No, it was actually basically they were testing it, they were experimenting it over a small set of user base somewhere, and they found the opportunity. And then they started, they found the opportunity and they just launched it at a larger scale. So that is how the experiment works. That is how they bring the business on the table.
Exactly.
Definitely, you have a lot of stake when your app is in the live production and you're performing an experiment. I think there's a lot of at stake. You cannot ship out an experiment or a particular feature and that breaks entire application.
Exactly.
So you have a lot of at stake. For example, the applications that run at O4S. If the application stops working at O4S, the entire manufacturing plant gets stopped. The entire production line is stopped because there is a bug in the application.
Correct.
So if we don't have the scope or the power or anything to stop that. So I think we need to be more into how to structure things because we have a lot of at stake.
Exactly. True.
So I think experimentation is important, and right now you were talking about the app stability. So why don't you help me understand how you are going to make my product a very stable one?
Okay, we'll do that. We'll jump onto that if you want to. Okay, so before I explain you like how we have set up the architecture, I would like to give you a brief overview, like the problem set what we faced while developing all this. So when I joined O4S, so we were looking how to. When I joined O4S, there were already like 5-6 apps currently in the production. Okay, so we were developing 5-6 apps and the team was small at that time. Okay, and in the startup culture, you don't have that much bandwidth to start unit testing at the earlier stage itself.
Right.
So yes, we started facing when we started expanding and the code base increased and the team we started hiring. Things become very, very messy. So we wanted to streamline our process in which the development can be if a developer is working on a particular feature and he ships out a feature, the other developer or the multiple developers working on the project don't have to worry about if that person has pushed a commit, so I need to cross check my module that it's going to break something. Because usually what happens is non-normal, monolithic, whenever a startup is starting up, they just try to ship out the product. That is the first requirement, is the pace.
That is the priority.
Right. But as we start developing, obviously we need more stability because we are scaling at a very exponential level right now. So we sat down and we thought about what kind of process we should be and what kind of architecture. There are a lot of architectures already present in the market, MVC, MVVM, Viper in iOS. So we looked out at each and every option, but one thing we realized was all these architectures were like UI driven. Everything you write in the code was based on what was in the screen, on the mobile screen. Whatever was in the screen, everything was written based on that only. We just wanted to eliminate this portion and decouple everything in the O4S into small segments, like Prashant and Shasha recently explained the microservices benefits on the backend side. So we thought, why not to implement the same kind of structure in the mobile side itself?
Right.
But currently there was no architecture of this sort, like not thinking not in terms of UI but the logic. So we decided, okay, let's make our own architecture on the basis of what we already have and deliver something more beautiful and amazing.
Yeah.
So what we started, and the major concern at that particular moment was we just don't want to streamline the process for like particularly for Android and then iOS working. We wanted teams to collaborate because they are mobile development teams. Although I believe like if you hear any developer, they'll say language is not a barrier. Right? So similar, I think in mobile development platforms should not be the barrier, Android and iOS. So they should work uniformly and collaborate with each other. So we want to standardize the product process for mobile development entirely. So what we decided was, we thought that firstly we'll test the monolithic architecture, and we'll try to ship at least small modules because the apps were already in production. We didn't want to break down anything, stability. So what we decided was we shifted from monolithic to modular architecture. Okay. So what do you mean by modular architecture here? So first thing we decided was we started segmenting in the app itself. There was a lot going on, so we started segmenting apps, small modules, and each and every module is going to be independent of the other module.
Right.
So if I'm making a change in one module, it should not affect many other systems.
Correct.
So how do you achieve that? So first we sat down, we thought about it a lot, and then we decided to segregate the business logic out of the application. We wrote down a core, and in that core we just had the business driven logic. Like for example, we have this scanning functionality in O4S in each and every app. So we segregated that scanning functionality not based on the UI, kind of a plugin search engine, a plugin system kind of a thing, that you have a scanning module, you need to plug it everywhere, and you don't need to worry about the UI because it just controls the core functionality and not the UI driven part.
Right.
So when you have stabilized and we wrote unit test around the entire core feature, so that was a stable part of the application which can be used by multiple O4S apps. So we developed the core functionality and we shipped out a couple of modules, and then we tested out, and then we were ready with the core modules. Then we started developing the modular structure in the apps. So I'll give you a brief idea how we did that. Let me just the concept that goes around, because we wanted an architecture that is firstly scalable.
Right.
We needed an architecture that is scalable to another level, and that is maintainable. No matter how many developers are working on a single project, it should be maintainable. Okay, and more importantly, testable, very easily testable. Testable. If you don't do unit testing in the application, you don't have confidence while shipping out the product.
Correct.
So what we did was, as I told you earlier, also like the modular section. So I'll explain you in brief how we started developing that.
Yeah.
So for example, this is the root module of the application. This is where you jump in the application. So this root module has just one responsibility, that whether the app has root token or not. You need the token to communicate with the server. So this just takes token. Do I have it or not? The root module, this is a module. We divided the entire structure into different modules, modules, each module just having a specific use case. Okay. And then if there is no token, the modular just goes and calls the logged out module, that the user has been logged out.
Right.
It is done. And if you have the token, then you go forward in the logged in module. This is the normal structure. So this is going to just check whether there is token or not. If there is no token, it will just go to login side, and if there, it's going to go into the login side. So for right now, let's just assume there is no token in the application.
Okay.
The user gets logged out.
Yeah. So this is our server. Okay. So if the user is logged out and there is no token, it goes. The logged out module makes a call to the server and gets the token and gets the root. So root is going to do again the same thing. It has the same functionality, just brings one single functionality to check whether the app has token or not. So now it has received the token. It is going to go back to the logged in module. Okay. So this is like a normal structure. If you see the basis of this is the normal structure. Let's deep dive a bit. Okay, so what we have done is we have solved one problem set here, that this one particular module will have only one use case specific to itself. Okay. So like logged out module right now had just one use case to fetch the logged out token to itself and give it back to the root module. And so if you see, they are not interacting directly. I'll explain this portion of it, how the interaction is going inside, how the data flow is going inside a module itself. Okay. So what happens when the user has logged in? So we have solved the problem, one problem, that use case defined modules we have. Okay. So now what happens if the user has logged in? Now we are going to show you the power of modularization. What a modular architecture can be achieved and how we can solve the problems of us.
Okay.
So this is the logged in module. Okay. The user has logged in. It goes to module. So a particular module can have some modules. It can call it. It knows how to instantiate its particular child modules. Okay, but the child module doesn't have any idea that where is it. It can be. It can be in any module X. It can be in any module Y, logged in. It can be in either the parent module which calls this particular module 1. Okay. Okay. So this is the module 1. Suppose. So this particular module will call its child. So this is module 1 details, for example. Okay. And the other module which is coming from the core module of us is the scanning module. Okay. So this scanning module just knows about the functionality, as I told earlier, about the scanning related. So
and so that is independent of other modules.
Yes, definitely. It is independent of it just controls the scanning. Okay. So and this will just display the details of the particular feature. This is kind of a feature module kind of a system, right? And the scanning module will just control the scanning.
So
yeah. So what we achieved via this is we have the core feature and we know this thing is stable enough. And when you start shifting into the modular architecture, you realize that there is a thing named as plugin system, right? So that becomes very easy. So this is right now acting like a plugin. So this can be plugged in anywhere else. For example, if the login module had another module 2. Okay.
Right.
And this feature also requires
or scanning?
Scanning.
So this
Like, for
can be
example,
exactly
for us,
implemented.
we can do dispatch and we can do linking, right? So scanning is required, suppose. So same module.
So it will call the same module only.
Same module
Can be directly linked.
that can be directly linked here. So what we have done is, for example, you ask me to run an experiment on the scanning screen. Okay, and I have and you want that experiment not just to be for one app, for multiple apps in O4S. You have tried to change how the flash icon will be in the O4S camera, or how the flow is going to be, and you have to alter it. So what we did to rapid the mobile development phase, we shifted this into the Nexus repository. So this entire scanning module is coming from a Nexus repo which we did.
Okay.
So this is replicated. So once I have made a change into a particular scanning module, every other O4S app can use this particular module.
So this becomes a plug-in feature.
This becomes a plug-in feature. Very easy to communicate, and very easy to use. So a developer doesn't have to worry that person made the change in the scanning module. Now what do I do? Because that change will automatically get pulled, and as they are business driven, not the UI driven, so nothing will break.
Right.
Right. So this is how the architecture we have set up. So each and every module has its own responsibility, and they don't know anything about the rest of the modules.
Acha.
Okay. So when you start going in these scenarios, okay, like you can see, this is a tree kind of a structure getting built up. Logged in module calls this, and then this calls the child module, and similarly, if this is a very vast feature, this can add some of its modules into it, right? So this becomes a tree kind of a structure. Right. So this can be X and this can call Y. So on and so on. So this becomes a tree kind of a structure in the application. So visibility increases immensely. You can see how the process flow is going from one, and as the use case of a particular module is done, this parent module just detaches this particular module and just calls another module.
Okay.
So how now I'll explain. Okay, so this is like the general architecture. So how is the data flow going inside a particular module itself? Like this is the communication pattern. I'll explain you the data flow in a module.
Okay.
Right. So I just explained you like a module. So how is the data getting transferred inside a particular module, so that inside itself also things are not talking to each other directly.
Okay.
So we wanted to decouple everything. Like you can say the scanning module was there, but how can you believe that it is not interacting with the child module? So this is how it is. So we have the view part, right, in every hand, and then we have the presenter or / view model. Okay. So you might not understand these terms as you're not from the engineering perspective. But basically view does this, whatever you see in the application, and the presenter or the view model just provides the data.
Acha, okay.
Data to a particular set. And what happens when you want that, okay, I want to call a particular module, that I'm in right now in module X and I want to now call it module X or module Y or module Z. So what happens is there is a file router. So this router is basically responsible for routing from one module to another module. The internal components of the module, the view doesn't care about what it is going to, because see, just the major reason which we did is we shifted from UI driven to logic driven business. Right. So this is a logic driven architecture. The router will only care about how the process, how we are communicating one module with another. The view and presenter don't have to worry about that. Okay. And there is another component inside this itself, that is the interactor. Okay, this is the core business logic. So this is the component which carries each and every business logic. Like a module scanning module, the entire business logic will be written in the interactor. It knows what to do in this scenario, what to do in that scenario. Okay, so this is the brain of a particular module, the interactor. So this is where you write, and this particular interactor can interact with a particular server. It is going to call to the server also if you need any particular set of data from. So that all thing is going to be managed by the interactor. It is going to call TK, and if there is a particular thing that needs to be driven, suppose the interactor says now the work for this particular module is done, we need to move to the next. It will inform the router that okay, I need to move to the next module. This router will talk to the router of another module right?
Hmm.
Router, module B.
Okay.
Click on the writing. Okay, so router goes to the module view. I know it's very complicated, don't worry guys. This is what I made my experimentation successful. Trust me, this is, I put in a lot of effort into typing into all this.
We trust our engineering.
Yeah, we trust
We
it.
really trust our engineering.
Okay, so if I,
Yeah, I trust you.
this is a normal diagram, so I'll just explain you this diagram in this. So a little bit explanation will help you. So I just explained you the bits and pieces. So this is how the diagram will build up and how the process would go inside. So this is my view. This is my presenter. And this is the brain, interactor.
Okay.
Right, I just told you. This is the router. And this is the server. So data model is provided. You just care about the presenter is only responsible कि क्या data पड़ा होगा related to the view. It just controls the view, and this is the only portion that are related with the view option, right? Like right now our code structure was structured, earlier the code structure was structured in such a way that everything was written, the logic was written in the repository or the presenter itself. We wanted to eliminate that, so the entire business logic is getting handled by the interactor.
Okay.
Right? It calls the server, it calls the router. So everything is going inside that interactor, and router is responsible for routing another module. So see, if there is a similar structure here, also there is another interactor. Right? There is another router of module B. This is then module B. So this will communicate with this. Okay, and then inside internal functionality will keep on going like this. So nothing is communicating directly. Right? So as in the first example I showed you, okay, where the user get logged on, it connects to the backend server,
Right,
and I told you it is not going to happen directly. This is what I meant, because the interactor is going to connect with the server, so the view don't have to worry about anything else, and the entire structure just works seamlessly. So each and everything is independent, so they are easily testable. You can write unit tests for the business logic as they are not view driven. So the entire architecture just becomes more beautiful, and the plugin system, when you introduce the plugin system inside it, it just becomes marvelous. For example, the product needs to do an experimentation on a particular feature, and they ship out the app. Okay, right. And after the app has been launched, they decide, okay, this particular feature is not working and the R count is going down or whatever. You cannot wait that to release another app and disable that particular feature. So you need to have a system, kind of a plugin system, where a person sitting over here can just click on one toggle over in the backend side, and on the app side that feature just gets removed.
Right.
So this is what we have been able to achieve using the plugin system, because we needed this. I knew at some particular point you guys are going to come and ask me that I need to run this experiment, Jatin, what do you do? You are saying the architecture doesn't support. We didn't want it to come to that stage. So that's why we decided to go for this modular architecture, where we could manage things so well that the pace of the development is also not affected, and we are able to control everything that is getting at the backend. So we have developed a logic driven and backend driven app rather than just a UI app based on the. So there is a lot of customization that can be done on the app side based on the architecture we are building.
Correct.
I think that is the flexibility that we are expecting in terms of.
Yeah, exactly. For all the
So I hope you get a little bit. I don't know. I'll give you a resume session of this.
So I think that is the flexibility that we are expecting from the tech team in terms of experimentation, and how the flexibility in the backend is going to support the experimentation at a large scale.
Yeah.
And that is what we have planned to achieve it when we want to expand.
Exactly. So I think now we should plan more experiments for them. We should get it done.
So I think
that's the thing.
now that Jatin is ready, let me give you a small presentation on how the experimentation fits in the product development lifecycle.
Right.
Jatin had given that technical understanding of how the experimentation is supported. Maybe I will take you across where the experimentation fits in. Right now what I'm trying to explain is where the product experimentation fits in the entire product development lifecycle, and starting the lifecycle in a very simple way. We have the product backlog. And the backlog, as says, it's the collection of all the product features that the product team is supposed to be built, and the product has to be shipped over the time. And as the product manager does is something that they makes a prioritization of prioritization from this backlog. So once the prioritization has been done, here is where the tech enters, and then product is built upon different modules. The engineers, the backend, front end, QA, everyone works and then come up with a solution which is right now live, and then they takes an exit, and here is when product team enters, and the product then start capturing the data points of the users. So basically how the user is performing on the new behavior, everything.
All the metrics
that we want to track is something we start keeping a track of it. This is where basically the product wants to measure the business impact of the feature that has been released, and that is where they have to experiment. That is where they want to understand the user behavior, want to understand how the user is maybe
make it more efficient, and basically introduce new ideas and maybe new metrics that we have to improve.
Right.
So all those things.
Right. So that is when once we have the data in place, we may be using the Clever Tap, or we may be the other data engagement tools or consumer engagement tools in collecting data points, everything. And once we have those, then there comes a stage where we make a hypothesis about what impact, what experiment we want to perform, and what is the say maybe the impact could be like why the conversion rate is just 10% and not 20%. So we have an idea on our mind. We have an intent, and now here comes an hypothesis where you make different hypotheses, set up an experiment around them. You set up an experiment, and then what you do is you then guide out to the tech team about how this experiment is going to be performed, and this is how again the experimentation comes in the backlog. They prioritize it. The product team again prioritize it. Which experiment has to be done first, which has to be done next, and that is where the tech is involved. The tech setups the entire.
So basically, it has become a process. You're saying.
Correct.
So
Right.
You made the experimentation part as a process of the product pipeline, development pipeline.
Exactly.
itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. This is great. Now this is what we have been doing. So I think even when an experiment fails, you get something out of it, right? That is why we have developed a different
That
hypothesis
experiment
system.
is all about embracing failures. Means
Exactly.
Exactly.
I could not have better. This makes perfect sense. So okay, so this is the development process we have set up.
Right. So when it goes back to backlog, then after prioritizing it, we goes back to engineering. Then pick up a module, the module in which we have to experiment, and then based on the success or failure, it goes back again backlog, depending upon whether we want to further do the experiment or whether we want to roll out it further or we want to create a new experiment. So
and everything, I think every time our experiment is successful, that is where it ends. We start rolling out to the masses, and with every failure, we have an idea. We
get some data,
and that is how we need to improve.
Exactly.
So this process is the reason my team is not able to sit idle, huh?
Yeah.
Development process you are shipping me every day. Huh? Okay. So we need to hack this thing, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you calculate these data matrices? Like you were saying, these are hypotheses, right? You have different hypotheses. So how do you reach on that? Like what are kind of experiments you
Yes.
have?
So basically, there are various kinds of experimentation, various types of experiment that you can do, depending upon what intent you want to get out of it. So depending upon कि आपको क्या outcome चाहिए, what's your end goal. There are multiple type of experiments. Majorly, there's the one which is most widely and popularly known as A/B testing. Now there are a lot of different types of experiment, but they are like different variants of A/B testing only.
Right.
So A/B testing is basically like in A/B testing, the simplest form of A/B testing is that you create a variable, you change one variable of your basically app, whether it could be even a small UI change, a small button, a small functionality, a very small minor action on a button. You just change that. It's a one variable. The important thing is it's only one variable that you're changing. So you change one variable. So you create it like variation A is the current existing app which is functioning, and variation B is basically a new variable that you change. Now you test out the new variable to a small segment of the audience. Let's say 20%. Just roll out to 20% of the audience. Now when 20%, the way the 20% interact with that variable B, the variant B, I get to know whether my experiment is successful or not based on the metrics that I'm recording and the way what my intent is, if I'm achieving it. So if that works, then I start rolling out variant B more and more and more. If it doesn't work well, then I create a new different variable.
So you ship out 2 different variables
Exactly.
simultaneously. You are saying.
Yeah. So we ship out.
When you're not sure about whether we need to use this type of feature or this type of feature. So basically,
Exactly.
in these kind of scenarios where you have 2 choices, you just ship out a particular set of features to user A and then you segment user B
Exactly.
and then decide on the basis of metrics.
Basically, product manager shouldn't make a pre-judgment on what the user is going to like. So it's
Exactly.
always like
True. You don't know,
testing.
you don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. Experiment keeps help us changing that. Even a lot of social media that you're using, the most popular social media that everyone is using to upload photos, even they basically tried this only. They changed the flow of their basically. They introduced. So there was one flow in which they show all the posts in a chronological order, and then there's another in which they show all their posts based on a different algorithm, based on interaction and engagement people do on their post. So the new the new flow they rolled out to 20% of the audience only. They saw how they interacted. They saw the performance of the new algo was better than the chronological order. So they started rolling out that further. So that was one small change only, one variable change how to show the post. That's it. So that's an A/B testing.
Oh,
Yeah, and then when it started performing well, now everyone is using that algorithm now. One more type of testing is multivariate testing, which is very much like A/B testing only. It's just that in it you make changes in you basically change the multiple variables. You change a group of variables. So when we discussed A/B testing, we said only one variable can be changed. But in multivariate testing, you make changes in a group of variables. But
are they related? Like,
yeah, exactly. I was going to, but ensure that it's not that you are changing some variables in group module 1, changing some variables in module 2, and then you're doing an experiment to understand that relation, because that is a very bad decision. You should not do that.
this is what we have left behind.
Exactly.
One module affecting the other module.
Exactly.
So we will not go back down that road.
Yeah, if you start doing that, you will receive death threats from engineering. So, so don't do that. So coming back to the multivariate testing, it's basically making a group of changes, multiple, but those are interrelated within one module only. So you analyze those group. So here your variation A and variation B is basically group. Group A and group B, so on. So that's how A/B testing only. There's another form of testing which is called funnel testing. Funnel testing is basically, as the name says, it's like the funnel or the flow of user when you're changing in the navigation flow of a user. So it is again like an A/B testing, but in it you're just changing the whole flow. So currently, let's say I'm following a flow of from page 1 to page 2 to page 3 to page 4. Now I'm creating a new flow in which I'm doing page 1 to page 5, then 4, then 2, then 3. So I've changed the flow.
I can totally relate.
I think
to this.
that is something that we recently did in one of
This is what we recently did.
Exactly.
Nightmares for building deciding. Because this was something new. We are changing the entire flow. Usually so this is what I think where our architecture helped, because it is not UI driven.
Exactly.
So it's not the flow driven. It's not the business.
So
logic.
we also have
we
that
are able
flexibility
to achieve all this. I think.
Right. So we have that flexibility to make that change, do that testing, and we are doing it right now. Yeah. So this is also very important metric for you. If you want to improve your user flow, then you should really try doing some experiments over there. How you can, by changing the flow, if you could get the better outcomes, or you can get more out of your users. Then there are some more testing like split testing and time lapse testing also. But then those are like very much specific kind of testing, which is like split testing is basically if you want to do an SEO optimization, so you make changes in a couple of pages only. Then time lapse testing is you want to do an experiment which is for a long run, which basically is also towards the company objectives also.
So basically you monitor the KPIs over the longer run.
Exactly.
Exposing the users to different changes, a different environment, and then you measure the KPIs.
For a long period of run. So depending upon companies to company, they have different kind of testing. Majorly that people do is A/B testing and the variations of A/B testing that we discussed. and that's also we are doing over right now. Yeah.
So Jatin, Karthik, what I think is we have been discussing about the importance of experimentation. What is an experimentation? That technical architecture where the experimentation fits in. But what I have realized from our discussion is like in increasingly digital world, if we don't do experimentation more, in longer scale, the product is going to die.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
I believe that very hard. Like if you don't set up a process in the media and you don't start experimenting with your product and you just keep on developing things based on your idea itself, then there are very high chances that the product is going to fail. At some point of time, there will be a deadlock.
So I have another question. So what if this is the case that makes testing experimentation so important? So why do companies hesitate, or why do companies don't have that sort of culture to like what is the blocker? Why don't do companies do it more?
See, it's not just blocker. Let me try to explain it a different way. So I think the basic entry point is the culture in an organization. Culture is going to do a lot of things for you, right? Streamlining the process. You should have management support. If you try and talk to the management, this is what they should try to do this to a particular app. This is going to beneficial be in this way. Okay, so culture in what sense I'm saying, it's not just about the management supporting you, but supporting you even if you fail. If you pass, everything is going well and good, everyone is going to clap for you, right? But what about when you're failing?
Right.
So I think the culture is very important, and the second thing is I think the engineering debt which every startup faces when you are in the starting phase of an organization, you don't have that much bandwidth, or like you don't have that much technical debt on your hand, okay, and you have to ship the product fast, you don't write unit tests in the starting, and then you try when the product scaling obviously. This is the normal journey. I'm not saying this is the best way forward, but seeing the startup culture, this is how the process is going on. So definitely you can overcome the engineering debt moving forward, but most important part is I think it's establishing the culture. For example, whenever you run a test, tests are majorly meant to fail in our product experimentation, right? It's not like you are going to do an experiment, it's going to succeed every time.
Exactly.
No, most of the times it will fail. So what happens if you are running an experiment in an organization and you run that experiment for 10 times and 8 times it fails and 2 times you get success. Okay, you got the success in 2 times and you improved your data set, but what about those 8 times? People think that as a kind of a resource wasted, that we implemented so much time for this feature, we invested so much our hard work and money, and then we have reached 8 failures. So I think the culture here needs to be set up that this is not just a failure, this is a stepping stone. Like failures are the stepping stone of success. So if you focus on the culture and you focus on the engineering, I think culture startups can easily accommodate all.
So I think what you were suggesting is like it means creating an environment where employees' curiosity is nurtured, where that data triumph opinions.
Exactly.
So that every decision is backed by data.
Yeah, data backing should be there, and you should have because every time you cannot succeed. That is what I say, like failures are the stepping stones of success. So you need to embrace those failures also. You need to learn from those failures and set up an environment, culture in your organization to support product experimentation.
And what I think is like above culture, it's all about a very sharp and strong technical team which we already have. So they are the backbone.
It would not have been possible. I really like the product, how we have developed, how our product team has developed the process of including the product experimentation in the normal product pipeline also. So we don't feel like the burden is coming from 2 ways. It's a standard pipeline, you see through that. There are parts of experimentation, there is normal development pipeline. So I think we have achieved great things, I think, personally.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, I think we can, to conclude the whole podcast, I think we can do that now. Is that key? First of all, doing experiments is really, really important. Doing rapid experiments is really important. So please continue doing that. It's very important to do experiments. It's also important to understand why you're doing an experiment. What is the intent that you want to achieve out of your experiment? You should be ready whether the experiment fails or it is a success. You should already have in mind what data points you have to look at. And that also you have to fed to tech, because they'll have to build the structure around it. It can't happen that you did an experiment and you realize, "Arey, ye bhi dekhna tha, wo bhi dekhna tha, wo."
Yeah, you definitely have the idea and the picture very clear at the moment you are starting the experiment. It's not the other way around. You start doing experiment. At least you should have a clear picture of the failures and the pros if you are starting an experiment.
Exactly, and that's why the flow that Mike mentioned, that is very much important. So you be ready what data you have to look at, be ready how you want to analyze it, and if it's a success, then what's your next step? Be ready with those steps also, as in whether you want to roll out fully, want to roll out partially, and if it's a failure, then failure doesn't mean a dead end. Always accept that failure is not a dead end. It may bring you new ideas, may show you new verticals that you can explore, and maybe from that you can create a new experiment that you can try. So that is the kind of process that you have to follow.
Right, so it's all about embracing the failures.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
And
So that would be all.
Yeah, I
from
guess
our
that's
side.
all. If
Okay.
you have any questions, queries, or any feedback, please comment.
Please comment, like,
like, subscribe,
share.
and do mention your feedback, any questions, or mention.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you so much, guys.
And please watch out our other videos also. And we are very much sure that they will be helpful for you also, especially if you're building your own product. So do watch out other videos and subscribe to our channel.